To address the issues facing Tennesseans today, from 10 News, this is Inside Tennessee.
Good morning and welcome to Inside Tennessee. I'm your moderator, John Becker. This week we sat down with Randy Boyd for his first interview since the August primary. The Republican candidate for governor came in second in that race to Bill Lee. Our interview covers a wide range of subjects: the economy, healthcare, education, baseball, but we begin with the election. Randy, we appreciate you being here. Thank you very much for your time.
It's great to be home.
We're going to jump into politics. Only a couple of questions on that. First, in your campaign for governor, name 3 things that went right and 3 things that went wrong.
Oh, that's a lot to name. But I'll say, just starting off, the first thing that comes to mind on what went right was the people. Just getting to know so many people across the state. Jenny and I reflected back, and we believe that in the last 18 months we made more friends than we had in our entire life beforehand. So that was a wonderful, wonderful experience and something that we'll cherish, and hopefully we'll be able to maintain many of those relationships for the rest of our life. We got to know our state from every corner, from Tiptonville to Mountain City, but every community across the state we know at a very intimate level, and so we're going to treasure that, and that I think went really well. I think the team that we put together was also great. I've been a part of a lot of high-functioning teams at my company, at Boyd Sports, with the commissioner of ECD. This was a very high-functioning team. Everybody got along, was collaborative, was open, challenging each other all the time. So it was a great organization. What went wrong? Well, first, of course, is we didn't get enough votes to win. So I would say that would be first and foremost. I think, we didn't, it was hard to get out our message of what I believe in and what I felt like were the top issues. The things that I ran on, the things I cared about, the mission that I started off with was on education, on jobs, and on helping our rural communities. And those, unfortunately, didn't resonate with a lot of our voters. And so you had to talk about other issues if you wanted to get them engaged in your campaign. So I guess I would say that would have been a disappointment that we weren't really able to talk about the things that I felt were the most important. I'll leave it at 2. I'd have to stretch to think about a third.
What do you think about this conventional wisdom summary of your campaign, that running politically too far to the right and choosing to run attack ads against your opponents are 2 key reasons why you lost?
Yeah, the conventional wisdom is rarely right. I've not paid a lot of attention to some of the pundits. It always brings a smile when I read people making judgments with very little information, but I guess that's what happens. Our Republican primary voters are very conservative, and so they're looking for somebody that's conservative. You need to share that you have the similar values with them before they'll actually hear you on some of these other issues that we talked about. So I don't think that was a legitimate concern. With regards to the negativity, I would say that's probably right. Before the negative ad started, some inside polling, which we haven't released, but I'll share with you. On June 28th, we were ahead 31 on our polling to our closest competitor, Diane Black, at 22, and Billy was somewhere in the mid-teens. The negative ad started. We started coming down. We started attacking back, and both pulled down. We're still ahead 9 days before the end of the election, but I think the overwhelming amount of negativity, now I'll say, frankly, against us was unsustainable. We had $2 million worth of TV advertising spent against us, 5 major ads that people saw, or Republican primary voters saw 13 times on average, plus 10 mailers, plus radio. And that's just a barrage that was hard to sustain.
Anything else you'd add about the campaign before we move on?
No, I think it was a great learning experience. It was something that I don't want to do again. That's always a question that people ask, but I'm not spending a lot of time digesting or diagnosing the campaign. I think I'm ready to move on. It was always about the mission. It was never about being governor. Being governor was a means to the end, and the end was completing the drive to 55. Something I started with Governor Haslam, something I was passionate about, and that was first and foremost and the central driver. I've kidded, not unseriously, but about if the governor could have had a third term, I would have been happy to be the commissioner and just been in the wings and helped him accomplish those things. The reason for running for governor was to make sure we had some extra time to complete that. But completing the drive to 55, making Tennessee #1 in the Southeast for high quality jobs, and helping the rural communities that I became so passionate about. if I'm not governor, I can still find ways to do those same things through advocacy, through philanthropy, and that's what I'm going to do.
Let's talk about what's on your immediate agenda.
Well, you know what, when I woke up on Friday morning and started looking at all the things that I'm responsible for, so on the business side, I'm still chairman of my company that's doing maybe 3 to 4 acquisitions this fall. I'm chairman of Boyd Sports, which may add a new baseball team. I'm chairman of Boyd Properties. We've got some projects downtown that we're working on, maybe an entrepreneur center in the future that will hopefully support our entrepreneurs in the community. And then I'm still chairman of Tennessee Achieves, which has touched 260,000 kids over the last 10 years. And they've got a lot of great work left to do. A new organization called Complete Tennessee that is helping to make sure that kids graduate when they go to school and figuring out why it is that they're not graduating. And we've got some ideas around that. As governor, I was planning on implementing them, but as an advocate, I think I can still lobby for that. And then finally, the Boyd Foundation is doing some projects, one of which is making Tennessee the most pet-friendly state in America.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask you about that, but I want to start with the economy. In recent years, you've acquired ownership of property in downtown Knoxville. What's your vision for that property specifically moving forward?
Well, we're constantly looking for new properties downtown. We love the old city. It all started with Jenny opening her Boyd's Jig and Reel and looking across the street and realizing this area can't be what it could be if somebody doesn't buy Patrick Sullivan and fix them up. So nobody did, so we stepped up, and one thing led to another. So we've become very invested in this part of the community. I think everybody takes responsibility for maybe one little corner of the world. This will be our little corner. And so each year, try to buy properties, fix them up, restore them, keep the historical relevance, and hopefully just grow the economy in that area.
You talked about baseball and the economy. People are still asking me, ask him if there's going to be a new baseball stadium downtown.
Well, so multiple things. One, Sevier County and Sevierville have been very good to us. We're setting records at the stadium that we're in now. We have a contract to stay there until 2025. Another big point is that as a baseball team owner, you can't afford, it doesn't make sense to build your own baseball stadium. It has to be something that the public sector has to do because they make revenue off all the sales tax dollars and property values that increase as a result. So that's a long way of saying that really the city and the county would have to make us an offer. I can't just do it on my own, and neither of them have. We've got new leadership coming in, so it's hard to say what the new mayors and the new county commission and city council are going to opt to do. But really the ball would be in their court.
You talked about crisscrossing the state for your campaign, and you've seen a lot of, I'm sure, good ideas and ruminated over those. Are there any that you saw that you thought, hey, this could play really well in my home of Knoxville?
Yes, actually, and thank you for asking it that way because I haven't thought about them so specifically about Knoxville, but I thought about them across the state. But now as you ask the question, I think there are quite a few things that I can bring home here. As I campaigned as governor, I talked often about, it's not about invention. It's not about going to Nashville and inventing anything new. It's more about discovery and scale, finding things that are already working in our state and then replicating those. And I could mention probably a dozen, but I'll mention one. First Things First in Chattanooga. It's an organization that counsels young men on what it means to be a father, what it means to be a husband, and they counsel them before they get married. Divorce rates in Chattanooga since this organization started 20 years ago have gone down 40%. It's a great example of a program that I wish I could be in a position to scale across the state, but I am in a position probably to help maybe launch something like that here in Knoxville. So I could mention dozens of those, but there's so many great examples of great programs across the state that I think we can bring home.
Randy Boyd, our guest on Inside Tennessee, back with more of our conversation after this.